So we're going to begin our meeting with a reading from the Bible, and then I'll do apologies for absence. Well, reading from the Bible and prayer. So this is part of Psalm 84, and I just need to get into the light so I can see it. Better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked. For the Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord bestows favour and honour. No good thing does he withhold from those whose way of life is blameless. Lord Almighty, blessed is the one who trusts in you. Let's pray. And Heavenly Father, as we begin this meeting, we want to pause and thank you for the love that you bestow upon us. Lord, we are not deserving, but you have been so good, so gracious, so merciful towards us. We are truly thankful. And we pray that as we meet to, in a sense, look back on a year and look forward, that we may be humble before you and realise that without you we have nothing. We are lost. We have no purpose. And yet, Lord, you graciously give us so many things. Amen. Amen. Now, it's possible at these sessions to have huge numbers of apologies for absence. I hope that we don't have that, because I hope that you're not racking your brains thinking, well, so-and-so isn't here, and they're normally here, perhaps I ought to give their apologies. So only if you've been asked to give apologies, speak out names now in an ordered fashion. I will relay them if it didn't sound very loud. Yeah.
Nancy Thomas.
Nancy Thomas. Yes.
Boy in Love.
Boy in Love.
Pat Hawkins, that you may know.
Pat Hawkins, yes, I've given Liz that name. Lovely. Thank you for not making it a long list. Very grateful for that. So, minutes of the last meeting. I'm not intending to go through them. Are you happy that they're a correct record? Those of you that got them and bothered to look at them, are you happy with them? It's only last September, so it's not as far away as normal. But are you happy? Good. I'm just going to go with that. So early on in the meeting, we have one of the key things, which is election of wardens. Our current wardens, as you know, are Wendy Burge and Jean King. Now, for the election of wardens, this is something that anyone who lives in Homer Parish can vote, as well as all those on the church's electoral roll. Now, in recent weeks, both Wendy and Jean have indicated that they don't wish to continue. They've done a 3-year term as wardens, and working with me for 3 years is enough for anybody. No, for various reasons, their own reasons, they feel actually that's a good length of time for them, and they're both standing down. I'm enormously grateful to them both. They've shown their wonderful pastoral nature, particularly during the restrictions that we've had. I've been really so pleased with all the phone calls, the way they've made, the way they've kept in touch, the way they've been thinking and praying about the members of the congregation. So I'm enormously grateful to them for that. And I have to say also that the chapel wardens at Huntington and Grandstone Road have similarly done a marvellous job, sometimes using other people as well to help out. But that has been fantastic. So I want to do come in, whoever you are. I can't see who you are.
I have to clap you.
Whoever you are. Jean, you just missed all the nice things I've said about you.
We'll see him again.
It's lovely to see you. And, sort of working with Jean and Wendy over the 3 years has been such a pleasure because they're such nice people and so easy to work with. And so I'm enormously grateful to them for the work that they've done. But we now are in a position where we need to elect new wardens. I've had 2 nominations. One is for Christine Price and the other is for Wendy Rothschild. Now, I don't know if there are any other nominations. You'll have to take my word for it that Wendy is willing to stand up. I can't show you her form here, but I've been in touch with her over the last few days. Is there anyone else who wishes to stand as church warden? Well, are you happy then that those 2 are elected? Yes. Let's give them a round of applause. And as Wendy and Jean breathe a sigh of relief, let's give them an enormous round. It's not the job of this meeting to organise deputy wardens at Homer. That can be done at a different time, and we're trying to still sort out the pattern of what we need. But there will probably be some people asked to be new deputy wardens. So the existing wardens, assume you're still staying, so that's not what I mean. But we may want to add to the team because we're slightly losing in numbers, because Emma Harrison has stopped being a warden, and obviously Wendy Rothschild is moving from deputy warden to being full warden. So that will be sorted out. Financial reports. A huge apology to the people that heard this last week. I will try and take it at a pace that doesn't look as though I'm panicking and rushing. But if you have things that you want to ask, please do ask. Things will rattle along for most of the meeting, and then there's going to be some discussions later. But if you want to know more, then please do ask the questions. So if you've got a copy of the report in front of you, page 5 of that would show you that our total reserves fell by some £3,000. So that's the figure at the bottom of page 5. I'll just check for myself. It's there, exactly where I want it to be. So that's, in a sense, that's what you most need to know about our finances, but it hides 2 important facts. We didn't do any major projects last year. And Grandstand Road, there are a number of things that the architect has identified that we do need to address. So we do need to do something in terms of major projects. It's not going to, I don't think it's going to be a massive project, but there's still quite a lot to be done there. It also doesn't, that figure, we just fallen reserves by 3,000. This is from, for those of you who don't know figures, it's from just under 43 to just under 40,000 that our reserves have fallen. It also hides the fact that we received £16,000 from the government. £10,000 for the church centre, which is because we have commercial lets they treat as a business enterprise, and 6,000 furlough, and that's because Jane in her work as cleaner at various times has been put on furlough, and similarly Liz in her work as administrator at various times has been put on furlough. And so there's been a £6,000 furlough money that the government has paid us. So as you can see, without that money from the government, we would have had a £19,000 loss. The £16,000, if you're looking on the accounts for it, it's on page 7. It's about midway down the page of income, and it's under other grants. So if you want to find it, that's where it is. How's that £19,000 shortfall, how's that made up? Well, if you look towards the bottom of page 7, you'll see the parish centres letting and St Mary's Grandstand Road letting, and you'll see that that was down some £8,000 overall because of the restrictions. There's also been a significant reduction in giving. That's more difficult to pinpoint. But you can see that the giving in the plate is down by some £6,000 if we combine all the three churches together. The donations figure is somewhat distorted by the giving towards the Children and Families worker, and so it's not easy to compare year on year, just in case you're looking carefully across figures and seeing why they don't add up or don't compare easily to the previous year. There's been some loss on envelope giving, though again it's hard to pinpoint as giving has come in via another church or through donations by another church. I mean, Huntington people are attending Grandstand Road or that sort of thing. There's also been a further shift towards the parish giving scheme, which has been such a help to our finances over this past year. Later this year in the Church Council, we'll be discussing a possible end to our envelope scheme. I want to flag that up now. There are three key reasons. We're now quite restricted on how much we can pay into the bank each month in terms of number of cheques and the amounts of cash. Too much and we incur bank charges. So the more that goes directly into our account, the better. Secondly, the cost of providing the envelopes is quite high and increases as the numbers who use the envelopes fall. Thirdly, administratively, it's a considerable burden to deal with the envelopes and recording them correctly. So the more people move to the parish scheme, the better. And as I say, the PCC will debate whether or not to end the envelope scheme. It still leaves you with three alternatives. It will leave you with obviously putting cash in the plate or by sending a donation. It will leave you with the opportunity of a standing order. We still have a few people in the church that are giving by standing order. Or there is the parish giving scheme, which has been made very simple to join now. I would say it wasn't that hard before, but it's in a sense, it's a phone call away now, so much easier to operate. And people like Rob would be very happy to explain the parish giving scheme and how to do it. He's been doing some work on he and Lisa have been doing work on our publicity for that. There was also a slight loss of income through not having weddings and baptisms. So any questions on our income? We can come back to it if you suddenly think of something. Our main regular expenditures, unfortunately, have remained relatively stable, though we have saved some money on utility bills due to the buildings being used less. It's not reflected in the 2020 accounts, but at the end of the year we shifted our insurer, and that should save about £1,000 a year. We've also negotiated cheaper broadband and phone contracts. That's all I briefly want to say about expenditure. Is there anything you want to ask about that?
Are you expecting to let it out soon?
Yes, the good news is, so looking ahead since end of December where our accounts go up to, Liz has been quite busy recently with people booking the church centre and Grandstand Road, so that's really good news. Some of our old users have decided, no, we're not coming back, but we've got quite a few new users, which is encouraging. Also, we've received another 10,000 grant from the government towards the centre, so that's a big help. Yeah, and I think as people come back to more normal attendance, I hope that there'll be some catch up in giving from some people. Any other questions? I realise the accounts are not the most exciting things for people. Okay, are you happy to approve the 2020 accounts? Just look vaguely as though you're alive. That's good. Okay, so that is that piece of business done. Are you happy? Wait a minute. Let's just check on this. In terms of appointments, David Owen acted as our independent examiner of the accounts last year. Are you happy that he does it again this year? Presuming I can talk to him nicely and persuade him.
Yes.
Yeah. It was a nice, easy job for him this time. I think he did it. I think he'd returned it to me within a day when I gave him the things. So we now come to some elections. So we have the chapel wardens. Now at Huntington, if you've read through the minutes last time, you'll know that Tim Bayliss resigned as deputy warden and wasn't replaced. Behind the scenes before this meeting, I've been speaking to Margaret Hampshire and to Sheila Tolson and asked them if they would consider working as a team, both as chapel wardens at Huntington, neither of them senior, neither of them junior, but working together. And I think they make an excellent team, and fortunately they agreed. And so are you happy to approve their appointment as chapel wardens?
Yes.
Good. And I did have a brief conversation, and she is happy to continue as chapel warden at Grandstand Road with some help from Christine, but not with Christine having an official title of any sort. No way. So are you happy that that good situation continues?
Yes.
Thank you. That's great. They do a fantastic job. I've really been impressed. I'm always impressed, but I think particularly during this period of the restrictions, the way they've kept in touch with the congregation. You know, particularly at Huntington, it's been quite hard because a number of them have not been coming to church at all during this period, and the effort made to in a sense, to keep in touch with people has been considerable. So thank you. Treasurer appointment. I am happy to continue as treasurer to do the accounts for another year, but I do want to hand over at the end of that period. So I will do the 2021 account. So this is to give fair warning. When I stop, I am really happy to spend the whole of the following year helping whoever takes on the role with whatever they need. I can honestly say the work on the accounts for April, because I've done the April bank rec, the work on the accounts for April was under 2 hours for the whole month. So it is a manageable job. I know that it got blown a bit out of proportions, but it's been good to have the job and to see, you know, what needs to be done, what makes it complicated, what it is in essence, which is basically like doing your own bank rec with the statement. I go through the bank statement. I make sure, but then I just allocate it into which pot of income it should come out of, or how it should be shown on the accounts. I don't have to produce those accounts. I just press a button at the end of the year and it produces all the reports for me. So, you know, it's not, you know, all those 5 pages are not something I've had to fill in or anything. You know, it was produce this report, out it comes. So it's a matter of just filling in. So every item of income on the bank statement needs to have a code, so the computer system knows where to put it. Every item of expenditure needs to have a code, and we put that in. And it really is, in a sense, quite a neat system that works fairly well. I am really happy to train someone on it. I feel I'm confident in it. Having said all this, you know, have a disaster next month or something, I'll be banging my head against the wall. But you know, over recent months, it's not been difficult. Producing the annual reports was not difficult. So yeah, I think if you're relatively happy with figures and with the computer, then it's not going to be too much of a thing. But have a think about that. We don't need to appoint yet. Officially, Liz is our treasurer. She is the treasurer's assistant in terms of what she does, but in terms of the diocese, I'm not keen to reveal to the diocese that I'm acting as treasurer. That is not because of anything illegal about about it, but I know I get so much flack about you really shouldn't be treasurer now, you should plan. And I can just do without the hassle of it. But our account is not set up so that I can fiddle it. Everything in our bank has to have a dual authorization. So I can't decide to pay money out of our account just off my own bat. So nothing is a single authorization. So it is a safe system, and obviously we do have the independent examiner, but it's a safe system. Are you happy for Liz to repeat? Yes, we are. Good. Now, the Pcc Secretary is similarly complicated. So, for diocesan purposes, the Pcc Secretary is Liz. That's because it's easier in terms of communication channels with the diocese. But in practice, it's Wendy Rochard who takes the minutes of the meeting. So she's the minutes secretary. And Liz, if you like, is the correspondence with the diocese secretary. But we tell the diocese that Liz is the secretary. It's very confusing, doesn't it? Wendy apologises for not being here. She's not very well today. So otherwise she would be here. So are you happy that system continues? Do say if some of you are suddenly bursting to be Pcc Secretary. This is the job I've been waiting for all my life. But otherwise, that's good. And Gift Aid Secretary is someone we need to appoint. Mike Burge, last time handing over this role to Wendy Davidson, and I know he's been doing that with Wendy. And it's been a bit affected by COVID, but I think officially are we at a stage where we can now have Wendy and with Mike giving a little bit of help where necessary? Is that where we're at?
As soon as we can get together.
Yes.
As soon as we can get together and handle it.
Yeah, that's lovely, thank you. And I do apologise to you both this year because it be more complicated because just how people have paid their money in isn't so neat with the envelopes as it normally is. Okay, are you happy with Wendy as being our Gift Aid Secretary? Good. Yes. Sorry, Wendy, did I see you a nervous twitch? That's good. Cool. So, Pcc Elections. Normally we'd have 3 spaces each year, but there are 6 spaces because last year at the annual we reappointed people for a year. So the people whose term of office is ending is Ruth Stott, Christine Price. Christine will be on as a church warden. Richard Rodder, Jan Goff, and Rose Vodden. And obviously, Wendy Burge and Jean King are coming off the PCC, so if they wish to stand on the PCC, they need to be elected on through this election coming. What else can I tell you that's useful? I think those are the main things. So hopefully that's clear. So there are 6 spaces. I haven't received any official nominations. What's new? I'm not worried about that. So if you want to stand, would like someone to nominate you, then we can arrange that. If you're thinking, oh, we haven't got 6, you should do it, you should do it. Please don't do that. We can appoint at other periods and co-opt. I prefer people not to be suddenly, in a sense, put on the spot or have last minute, doing. So if you know that you're willing to stand for the PCC, then please do so. But please don't panic if we don't fill all those 6 positions. Is that fairly clear enough? Yes. Can you cope with that? Is that sort of sufficient? Okay, so can I have people that are brave enough to think that they'd quite like to be nominated? So Gerald, Wendy, Jean, Jan. So you want to know whether you're on or not, Mike? You're not, so do you want to stand? Yeah? And Mike, sorry, Liz, can I ask you just to write down those names? So I've got Jan, Gerald, Jean, Wendy Birch, and Mike Jeffries. Okay, we have under 6, so are you happy to accept all those? I won't go through the bother of sorting that through.
Sorry, could I just ask, do I automatically go on as chapel warden?
Yes, I think you do. I think that's how we've done things.
I'll keep quiet then.
Yes.
So in my list here, the chapel wardens are not under elected members. So yes. So I think there will be one of the things I want the PCC to discuss is each of our home groups having a representative on the PCC. It may be that we're close to that already, but I'm really keen that when we're discussing things as a PCC, in a sense, the consultation should be wider. And so it may be that a home group could spend 15 minutes just discussing something that's coming up at the PCC, and the member of the home group that's on the PCC could then bring back some feedback from that discussion. I'm keen that there's a wider sense of ownership of the decisions that are made and the vision we have. Okay, so we've done the elections. We don't need to do deanery synod elections because they only happen every 3 years, and I've got confused with them, but I think we don't need to do them. So that looks good. So we've done the elections. Dun, dun, dun. And there was a swing towards now. So prior to the meeting, you should have hopefully a copy of the Warden's report, Deanery Synod report, and Electoral Roll report. Is there anything you want to ask me as a result of those? There was nothing earth-shattering in those reports, but if you want to ask questions, now is a good time to ask. I'm just going to get myself a drink of water to run down. Apologies. There is water here, if any of you like the art. Right, you haven't come up with anything, I don't think, so I'm going to go on to the Vicar's report. We're going to begin in a moment by remembering people, and so I'll just wait for people to regain their seats. And if you're thinking, oh, but I wanted a drink of water, if you can just go after we've remembered the people's names, that'd be great. So these are people who, since we did the last edition of our prayer diary in 2019, have died. You remembered some of them at the last annual meeting, but I think it would be good to remember them all by name. It reminds us of, in a sense, what a traumatic time it's been, though none of them, I think, were COVID deaths. But we need, hopefully, as I say the names, you can thank God for that individual, and also do remember their loved ones. And although I'm going to list something like 10 or 11 names, you'll know that there are many others on the prayer diary who've lost parents or siblings during this time. So there's been a lot of grief and sorrow. And I think it's good just to pause for a moment. So, Father, as we mention these names, help us to remember each of them with love, with thankfulness, and please surround their loved ones. We remember Margaret Bird, Brenda Eckley, Jesse Edwards, Barry Fitzpatrick, Les Harrison, Harry Hartman, Margaret and Bob Hartland, Ron Jenkins, Hayden Lloyd, Mabel Townsend. Amen. And there have been some births too. So Chloe and Will Jones have had a new son, Alistair. Rob and Teresa McCrory have had a new daughter, Edith. And Lucy and James Turpin have a new son, Harry. Some of those are quite grown up now, but such is the nature of things. In my report, I don't want to look back, as there's not been, in a sense, a lot to report on. Those of you who were here last week will have heard from Rob the main news that the new estate and our plans for a church plant there are on very long-term hold. Similarly, the timing for starting a new midweek evening service no longer seems right. We need to recover our momentum and see where God's calling us. And very importantly, we now know that Rob is staying with us, which is absolutely fantastic news. Yeah. Looking forward, I have no great plan. That's partly because COVID hasn't helped planning, partly because quite a lot's gone on with sorting out the change of plans and Rob's position. But the fact there's no detailed plan is good, because I want the PCC to be engaged in creating a plan. And there's also a new curate, Erin, who's arriving on Tuesday, and she will have a lot to offer. She doesn't start officially until July the 4th. I do want to give you, however, some pointers as to what might be happening. Now, in previous years, we've relied on this diagram, if you've been at annual meetings, what I would call a stepping stone approach in the journey from the far-off land to the promised land. Those who have very little connection with the church at all, to the promised land where people are clearly involved in our church, involved in the life of the church regularly, often members of home groups, things like that. But that's how we've been looking at it in the past. I'm not abandoning that, but we're going to look at things in a slightly different way this evening. And I want us to think not so much of an ABC, but a DEF. So, discipleship. What does it mean that we're going to be focusing on growing as disciples? Well, it may mean that we run a leadership course for those who benefit from that. It may well involve the PCC doing some training and being much more engaged in the decision making. There will hopefully be a continuation of the tips that during lockdown and before Rob and I would give as to resources to help you on your own grow in your faith. A continuation of encouraging people to join home groups, and also, I think, more support to home group leaders, and to make sure our home groups are really helpful in encouraging each other to grow as disciples. They are helpful in that, but could they be even better? We will be continuing with the emphasis on recognizing the front lines that each one of us have, the people we meet as part of our ordinary everyday lives, and how do we best support each other on those front lines in serving God? So that's the D. The E is evangelism. Making sure that the groups that we have as a church that are, in a sense, quite community focused, that they're seen as part of our outreach, that they're attractive, and give us good opportunities to invite people to find out more about the Christian faith. This obviously applies to Busy Bees, which has been doing that, but it also applies to our discussion that we're going to have later on this evening about over 60s, friendship group, men's group. There may be other groups that we want to set up as a church or be involved in the community. What events, groups do people, what do you want to invite people to? Film nights, socials, that sort of thing. And also, how can we reach out to that new estate, Hereford Pond? Hopefully our curate will have a particular focus on this, as it's been part of her training to do pioneer work. The F is for fellowship. How can we strengthen the sense of being a church family? After COVID restrictions end, I think we need to spend time together, catching up with one another, just hanging out, as many ordinary families are doing as well, by way of catching up. We need to look to increase the way we support and encourage one another, have a real sense that we're engaged in God's work together, more of a shared vision of what God's calling us to do. And part of that sense of belonging comes through people sharing their stories of their front lines, the challenges they face, and how God is at work. And home groups have such an important role in this nurturing this sense of belonging, but also other groups have a role in this. So D, E, F, but there's also a C in this. There's a curate to welcome and to train. We're all going to be involved in helping to develop her ministry. I hope you'll really support her and encourage her. She's going to be with us for 3 to 4 years. Welcome her into your homes, invite her for meals, share your stories with her, and be open to the new things that she might bring. I'm really looking forward to it. I had a little taste because we got Rosie on placement here for 8 weeks at the moment as part of her training. She's a little bit behind Erin in her training, but and we had a conversation today, and it was really good to, in the talk, her way of looking at things and the good questions she asked made me think about the way we do things here. New thoughts came out of it, so it's really exciting having someone at the stage of being a new curate, and I hope you'll really welcome that, get to know her well. So that's all I want to say by way of report. Is that okay? Does anybody desperately want to come back on anything of that? Now, what I'd like to do is to do 3 topics now. So there'll be an introduction to each topic and then a chance to talk on your tables, and then we'll have feedback. Now, obviously, with so many tables, I'm not going to have feedback on every question from every table. You need to think, yeah, this needs to be said from our table, even though I didn't say it, and so on my table isn't saying anything. It was a good point, so I need you all to join in the process of feeding back from this. Now, the first of the things is, I need to find this section of there. No, that's not it. So, this is to do with a landscape architect's report that we had for, in a sense, the surrounds of Homer Church. This is a picture that Rob's brother, I think, took. Is that
brother-in-law? Yeah,
brother-in-law took. It shows what an absolutely beautiful church Homer Church is. But this is the view that you get of Homer Church as you're going past it. It is there. The tower is there somewhere. But as you can see, quite a lot of it is obscured. And so there's a big fir tree there, as you can see. It's not got a protection order on it. It's causing trouble with the wires above it. It's nothing to write home about as a tree. So one of the suggestions is get rid of it.
Was
Now-
it planted in memory of anyone? Sorry.
Not that I know of.
Right.
After the words timber, I shall no doubt find out. I'm not aware of it. If any of you do know, then please speak. There's also this tree, this variegated holly, that is blocking quite a bit of the view. The landscape architect suggests pruning this back, not getting rid of it, but pruning it back so that it's not growing quite so tall. We're also getting the estate being built, so as you come around the tower, you're very aware of how close the building is. The camera, in a sense, doesn't show it as the eye sees it. It is really quite close and prominent. The landscape architect suggested that we screen ourselves from the estate. And so you can see a tree, a fairly tall tree there. Obviously it's not in bloom, so it's not being much of a screen at the moment. But he is suggesting we plant 3 trees to the right of that to screen us off from the estate. So it will be in this area. There are some sizable areas where there's not a headstone, and it would be possible to plant the trees. And he is suggesting these trees. So on your left, we had the Betula Giacomonte, with its stunning white bark and light foliage. Then we've got a liquid amber Styraciflua, with its great pyramidal form, stunning autumn colour. Sounds like something out of Monty Python in Norwegian blue. And then the third tree is the Paris Chanticleer. No, sorry, I've got this the wrong. Yeah, no, I don't know if I've got it the wrong way around. I could have got them the wrong way around because that's the pyramidal form, spring blossom, autumn colour. Anyhow, those are the 3 trees he's recommending for that position. So, just to let you know, so continuing on, he's also, one of the things that I hadn't really thought of, the thing he most pointed out was our fence with next door. Yeah. It's particularly bad at the moment because we've got some sections down. But it's also bad even where the fence is up because you can see over into their bins. They're built onto the house fairly recently in a little extension that is hideous. I don't know if they got permission for it. Be interesting to ask. He wants us to have a much better fence. So he's looking at this sort of fence. And so we may end, if we agree with that, we're obviously going to end up in negotiations with the home about that. They are responsible for the fence, but whether it will have to be a part thing. Obviously, during these COVID times, I've not wanted to be a burden at all upon the home. They've had more important things to tackle. This isn't the church. This is Lambeth Palace. And this is the fig tree at Lambeth Palace. And Barbara Hartland and Harry had connections with Lambeth Palace, showing people round for several years, I think, was that right? 20 years. And in their inimitable fashion, they got to know the gardener there, I think, and got a cutting from that fig tree. And it's doing very well. And Barbara would like it to be planted in the churchyard. And the architect has suggested that it goes next to the buttress, next to the end of the church here. He says that would be a wall that would suit it, so it'd be up against there. I think that would be great to have. So a fig tree with real, sort of pedigree. But again, so that's something that you can discuss all these things in a moment. This is obviously by the tower. This is what do they call moonberries? Is that one? Snowberries. Why do I always call them moonberry?
Yeah.
Snowberry, which is a hideous shrub, I think, because it spreads so rapidly. I would like to see a different shrub there. I think it needs something there, but he's made some suggestions, but that's another area to look at. There's depending on what happens with the fence, there's the bed, in a sense, along the fence at a low level next to the stone wall. That's tattooed. It's made a few suggestions on that. Somebody will have spotted that. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, so that's showing the bed again, sorry. Somebody will have spotted the work Liz has been doing in clearing in the churchyard, removing the ivy, and she interestingly discovered this. This is at the front of the church, which is, you think it's a cider press, is that right?
Yeah. The actual press is
No cider press.
No.
It's the base one, isn't it?
Like the base one,
Yeah.
It's the base one, but it hasn't actually got the...
No. So, the landscape architect, even though I sent him a picture after Liz has cleared, it wasn't over impressed. He said, well, you could sell those stones. But he didn't particularly want to make it a feature to make anything of it, just so that you know. I'm trying. Now, this is, again, a view of the church. Now, what I want you to spot here is the whopping great notice and the small notice. There is another whopping great notice for the residential home at the other end. So we had a chat about this. So I will, when there's opportunity, so, if the PCC think this is right, suggest that they move that sign to the other side of their gate so that it's not quite so on our pathway. We may have to pay for that, but that's not a huge thing. I'm interested that they can have the two really big notices because churches are under huge restrictions when it comes to their notices. I would like our board to be bigger and possibly not right at the entrance because it blocks the view if it's bigger, because I think our best view is of the tower and the church. So somewhere here, which is, as you can see where the edge of the church is, somewhere the other side of this wall, but a lot higher. And possibly having not a lot of information, other, welcome to Homer Church, worship at 11 o'clock. Doesn't need a lot more than that. Other information perhaps could go if we had a board on the side of the path going down, not far into the gate, but on against the fence, just with a bit more information as to who to contact on that sort of thing. So some suggestions there. So that is the end of your pretty slides. What I'd like you to do now in your group, so the questions are up there. Which of these proposals are you most enthusiastic about? Is there anything you don't like or really think we shouldn't bother about? Is there anything else we should be considering? Sorry about the tense there. Are there any tweaks you'd like to make? Okay, so this is for you to discuss in your tables. I'm going to give you 10 minutes. So we're off to the next topic, which is looking over 60s. So if you're not up to date with where we are, basically the catering team at over 60s feel that they can no longer provide the lunches. That's not just one person, that's a group decision led by Barbara. And so the lunches are not possible. We have tried to find outside caterers to do it at a reasonable price, and we can't find a competitive price that we think would work for the lunches. So we're thinking about something different. But it's helpful to think what was particularly good about over 60. Now, I don't mean to say all the quality of the roast beef or roast apple pies or that sort of thing. It's just out of this world. All those things would be very true to say. But there are other things about over 60s that made it special. Some of those things we ought to maintain. What would have made it even more attractive to invite people to? So now, sort of, it may be that you think, well, wasn't it a good idea that by and large it stopped for the summer, given the group of people it served? Perhaps that was needed by the catering group, and there was a special events during the summer, but, is it good to stop things during the summer that are of that nature? Would it have been better if it had been every week? My stomach says yes, but in terms of the work involved, no. But that was the thing. If we went for a tea, what sort of tea would it be? So, I could spend a long time thinking about that. Rob and I will go into a separate group about that. What other activities could be added to the tea? Either optional before activities or during. So it could be, for instance, with over 60s we had the communion service once a month. But, could there be a craft group or a book club, or could there be other things that then went on into the tea? If people wanted to come to something beforehand, even during the tea itself, are there things that happen? Over 60s had the whatever you call it, the prize draw, the draw for the thing, the raffle. So things like that. And what about a name? Now you'll find out I've got a thing about names, but over 60s is a name that puts some people off because they don't read the word over 60s. They read the word you've got to be really old to go to that group, and it's just I've met a number of people late on in their 60s who said no, I didn't feel old enough for over 60s, because there's just, if you put an age on something, it's like if you want to make it over 65s, then some groups put over 50s. People, it's ridiculous what people do with names, but actually putting an age on a name is not good. And also, perhaps there might have been some people who weren't over 60, who were younger, who would have been around for lunch and would really have appreciated it. Perhaps somebody who was caring for somebody who had to be, around doing that. So, perhaps that wouldn't have worked with over 60s format, but perhaps the new thing it might work with. So I don't want you to be, this is why I have a problem with names. So this is why I think neutral names, but you may disagree. So I would go for Homer Teas. It is what it says on the packet, but it doesn't say you've got to be a certain sort of person or a certain. So, is the name important, and have you got any sort of views on that? So, into your groups, discuss. 10 minutes. Okay. I do want to, if you can face it, quickly do some thinking about men's group, friendship group, just so that I get some feedback. I'm going to give you a shorter time on this because I know you're tired. And what I want us to do is just quickly look at this. What I realise that a lot of you don't go to men's group or friendship group. So, in a sense, part of the question is, why is it you're not going? Is it because actually you're quite busy? You've already got things on that make it busy, or it's just you don't really like going out in evenings? Still, there may be people that you know who you could invite. And what is it that stops you inviting them or make you think it's not a group that you want them to come to? Because, sort of men's group is struggling on numbers. I think that's fair to say, George. Friendship group is doing a bit better, but it's not getting, lots of people coming in. It's enough for the committee room, but that's a fairly small, small target. And, you know, sort of, again, you know, sort of, these groups could be, you know, so when someone new comes to the church, it could be a great group for them to get to know other people quickly. It could be a great group if you've got a friend who you're thinking long term, yeah, it'd be great if they were coming to church, but this is a step on the way that they come with me to the putting competition or to the quiz evening or whatever, you know, event, and it becomes part of the journey towards becoming fully involved in the church. So don't think about just, well, actually I don't want a group like this. Be thinking about, but what about people you know who might want a group like this? So what's the purpose? What do you think is the key purpose of men's group, friendship group? What would make these groups more attractive to invite people to? Do we need a separate group for men? Any particular suggestions for activities? I'm sure Wendy and George will be listening eagerly for that. And does the name matter? Now, you know what I'm like about names. So I'm going to say, obviously, I don't like the name Friendship Group. Now, I know Wendy disagrees with me on this, and I perfectly accept, you know, that she said Friendship Group's good because it describes what it is, one of its key purposes. But for someone on the outside, it's quite bold to say, I'm someone who needs friendship. And that's my problem with it. It feels like you've got to be, it's quite, you've got to be in a fairly sound emotional state to say, I need friendship. It feels like a cry for help. And most people don't want to necessarily admit that or say, I'm going to a group because I need friends. I haven't got many friends, mate. And that's my problem with it. But I'm happy to be overwrought. So, you know, it's interesting to see what other people think. We're allowed to disagree as a church on things. You know, that it's not a problem disagreeing if we do it nicely with each other. And so, yeah, so 5 minutes to think about that. And then come back to me. Okay, thank you very much. Now, there are just a few notices to end with. I think what I'll do is reflect on those conversations with George and Wendy separately, which would be good to do. Thank you. If there are other things you want to feed in on that, please do so. First of all, rhubarb is what I've got to say to you. Please do take rhubarb that's on the counter. Want to get rid of that rhubarb from Vicarage Garden. The next PCC is going to be the 15th of July, possibly. So probably 15th of July. We're also short on the coffee rota when we restart coffees on Sunday mornings at Homer. If that's something you would like to consider, you know, so right, okay, you know, so there are if we want lots of people on the coffee rota. So if you're interested in that, please have a word with me or with Wendy Rochard. And I think that's all. So thank you very much for working so hard this evening. I appreciate that. Thank you.